Welcome to My Conversation, a presentation of KAIL-TV My Central Valley. So let's get My Conversation started.
Good morning, and welcome to My Conversation right here in My Central Valley, KAIL. It's Feather. That's all you know. It's Feather the Wise once again, getting ready for the weekend, man. After yesterday's show, it's only appropriate that we follow up with today's show because I need all of the advice I can get. And on that note, please put your hands together for our first guest, attorney at law, that is Kevin G. Little. Let him meet you guys. I have to shake your hand, sir.
Thank you.
We already did the deal. Let's go to trial.
Okay, perfect.
Now
I'll meet you there.
I need a ride. That's what, you know how hot it is outside? Okay, now, attorney at law, what area of law do you practice?
Well, I do a number of things. Mostly what my office does, and there are three of us, we do civil lawsuits on behalf of plaintiffs, people who are suing. Got it. And we also do criminal defense. Okay.
Now, with the knowing, how long have you been practicing law?
27 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely shocked right here on camera.
27 years.
You look like a young fella.
Oh.
Like you just. Now, how did you get interested in law? Let's go there.
Well, I'm not going to lie and tell you that it's always been an aspiration of mine. I went to college thinking I wanted to do computers.
Really?
But I wasn't really that good at math. So I was about a month into my first year at college, and we were doing a project a week where we were supposed to do programming. Right. And after 4 weeks, I was 4 projects behind. So I figured that I needed to switch up, and so that's what I did.
So the light went off. You was like, maybe this ain't for me.
And Kevin Little, the lawyer, was born out of that failure.
That was it. And why law?
Well, I've always thought that law was crucially important in our society. It's where the rules are made. It decides who gets what rights and who gets what benefits. So it just was right down my alley. I've always been a very rule-oriented person.
Got it. I like to ask those questions because being that you've been in it for that long,
right?
I'm just curious how you got started, like where the passion come from, or
yeah. Well, the passion, to be honest with you, I started out. You know, I come from pretty humble beginnings, and I started out being a lawyer thinking this was a good way to make a good living and to do something, you know, that's interesting. But my passion came, I worked for a judge who was a civil rights attorney before she became a judge. And she was the one who really just blew my mind. I couldn't believe how much passion she had for the things that she had done. And she totally brainwashed me and directed me to where I went.
That's incredible.
That's right.
You're local here in Fresno?
I am.
Okay. I know off camera we're discussing it for a little bit. A lot of times you go to court and you got things all over the place and then you have representation. What are some of the things that people should do preparing for an appearance in court?
Well, one of the things that I tell people, and we actually, for new clients, we have a list of do's and don'ts that we have them actually sign when they sign up the case, okay? So number one, any evidence that could possibly disappear, document it, save it, make sure it's secure.
Now explain evidence that could possibly disappear.
Well, basically that would be everything, but most important, media evidence.
Okay.
People think, oh, I have it on my phone. It's secure. Phones get dropped, they get lost. Various other things. It has to be backed up in a cloud somewhere. It should also be on a hard drive somewhere. And most important, when you come to meet your attorney, bring a copy of the video so that it can become part of your file. I can't tell you how many times that's happened where at the important moment we're trying to figure out where videos or photos are. And you don't want to be in that situation.
Yes, trying to filter through, trying to find it so if they bring it off the top, you can file it on your end and not have to filter through all of their stuff. Exactly right.
Exactly right. Another thing that we tell people, and this is obviously the age of social media.
Yeah.
Okay? If you are in a lawsuit, you should make any and all social media that you have private. And even when it's private, you should not mention anything about your case on social media. It is a standard thing that's being done in the law these days. Whenever someone is suing, or whether they're a witness or whether they're a defendant, the first thing that the opposing attorney does when they want to get a feel for the person is they try to find out what social media they're on, what they're all about, what they've posted about their case.
Right. And try to use that against them.
That's exactly right. So make it private and don't talk about your case. That's really the two best things you can do. For instance, there was someone, not my client, thankfully, but he was in an accident, and 2 weeks after the accident, he posted a video on his Facebook of him dancing at a wedding. And that didn't turn out so well.
At all?
No.
You got to think past the moment.
That's right.
So it's and they can use that evidence if they, like, say the other attorney can use that against them in court.
That's absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with that. And even if you think your profile is private, it's really easy to, I think young people know this, understand this word, but now to troll someone,
right?
Become a friend with someone who's friends with them and indirectly gain access to at least part of their profile.
Yeah.
So just the safe solution is just don't talk about your case. Don't post anything related to your case on your social media.
Now, are there any other do's that you want to touch on real quick?
Yeah. Witnesses. If you have witnesses, particularly if they're not people that you know well, make sure you get their contact information so that somebody can contact them and get a statement from them as soon as possible. Memories fade, and once people are out of the moment, what you find is they have their own lives to lead, and they're not going to go so far out of their way to go to bat for you. So it's as soon as you can, as soon as the issue is still hot and recent, you want to make sure you get statements from your witnesses.
Definitely good information, all good information. We're going to continue that list of good information right after these messages. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more from Kevin Little.
This episode of My Conversation is sponsored by the Law Office of Kevin G. Little. This episode of My Conversation is sponsored by the Law Office of Kevin G. Little.
And we're back right here on My Conversation with actually one of our sponsors for the show. Absolutely appreciate you being a sponsor. Please put your hands together one more time for Mr. Kevin Little. Welcome you back. All right, before we left to break, we were discussing some of the do's and don'ts on preparing for appearance in court. Want to go ahead and continue that list because that's great information that we can go ahead and touch on. If you can, I know you were in the middle of a do. So
yeah. Well, one of the things is most people communicate much more by text these days than they do by person-to-person phone calls.
Yeah.
And that can be good and bad.
Okay.
It can be good if it helps you document something that's important for your lawsuit. It can be bad if you, in a moment of anger, say something that you regret in a text message, and it can actually come back to hurt your case. One example is in a family law case, for instance.
Okay.
It's par for the course these days that in a custody dispute or a divorce dispute, you see both sides. Everyone comes into court with the screenshots of text messages.
Yes.
So if you're texting with your soon-to-be ex or the mother of the child or the father of your child that you're fighting in custody over, just assume that anything that you text that person could end up in court. So you might want to think twice before you say things like, I don't care about the custody order, I'll bring him when I'm ready. Or
why does that sound familiar?
Or where you make deals about child support or anything that could come back to haunt you in your case. So that's extremely important. Right. Now, in terms of also the positive side of it, if there is something important in text messages, many phones, like I have an iPhone, and I think probably lots of people do, a lot of the messages disappear after a certain amount of time. So you might want to, if something on your phone is important, there are lots of different apps that you can get that will convert your text to an email so you can send them to yourself and save them or back them up in that manner.
Got it.
And if you realize after the fact, after you've already erased something, that a text was important. You have a very, very limited amount of time to get it from your cell phone provider.
That is
Most
correct.
providers don't save actual text messages for very long. Some of them, I think Sprint, don't save them at all. So
Wow.
if you need to get something from a provider, you literally have to do it ASAP. You cannot wait. It'll disappear.
That's important that you have that app that you can download.
Yeah,
to back
there are
it
lots
up.
of different apps. I think there's one called Email My Text, and there are lots of similar ones. I'm not here to advocate for any
Right.
particular one, but if there's something in your text messages that's important that you need to document for your case, don't just rely on it being on your phone.
On your phone. Because I know there's certain phones, there's certain settings. I know this going back over some text messages over something I had to deal with. And you can set it for how many text messages that are saved. Like some may
That's
save
right.
300, some may save 600 text messages.
That's right.
And with that, you can go ahead and then convert that over to the app that you were talking about.
That's right. That's right.
That comes in handy.
It comes in very handy because
Yeah.
you can't presume just because someone said something 2 years ago in a text message that they're
That
going
it's
to
still
remember it or abide by it.
So best case scenario is make sure you either screenshot it and save it or email it instantly instead of waiting.
That's exactly right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Now, a couple of more don'ts before we go.
Well, a couple more don'ts would be do not think, and this is talking about employment disputes.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that when you sue your employer, your coworkers, even if they are people you think are friends with you,
Right.
they still need to work for a living.
Definitely.
And they won't be inclined necessarily to go out of their way to help you to document something that you felt was unfair in the workplace. So if you have documentation of something that's going on at work, please keep it, because just expecting, I can't tell you how many times I've heard of people who come in and they think, oh, I've got 10 coworkers who are friends of mine who have seen everything that's happened, and
Yeah.
they'll all come to bat for me. Actually, they won't.
Right,
They
right.
won't. You need to document it on paper and text and email, however it is, and not just rely on people's memories.
Yeah, that's very important. I know a lot of times you develop friendships on the job,
That's right.
and then you do forget that thing that they still have to work.
That's right.
You know, your dispute is with the company, and they're looking like, hey, man, I got to eat.
Yeah, no
So-
one wants to be caught in the middle of
Not
that when they think that maybe their job might be at risk.
No, not just on the matter of those cases with lawsuits. What other area of law do you cover?
Well, we do criminal defense work,
Okay.
which is the legal equivalent, I say, of emergency medicine,
Got it.
because you're dealing with people whose liberties literally are at risk,
Definitely.
and you've got to really be smart in terms of the documenting of evidence and the early investigation and doing a lot of things that literally could make the difference between your remaining free or ending up doing time in jail or prison.
That last bit right there, remaining free or doing time in prison. You want to make sure you got a good lawyer on your side.
That's right. And number one, get a good lawyer. Number two, cooperate with that lawyer.
Yeah, that's another thing. That a lot of times they get a lawyer and they feel like that they're telling the lawyer no, this is what he does.
Right.
Listen
right.
to the advice.
Right.
Before we get out of here, I once again want to thank you for being a sponsor and being on the show. Just in quick legal advice, all around legal advice. If you could tell the people out there who are coming into court, what is the number one thing that you would have them remember to do before they get to court?
The number one thing you should do before you go to court is shop around for a good attorney.
Got it.
Don't just Google someone. Would you, if your child needed surgery, you wouldn't just pick the first name that
Right.
pops up in Google. You would research the person, make sure you got someone who can really help you. It's the same with attorneys. Anytime you're dealing with something important, make sure you have somebody good on your side.
You got it right there, right here, direct from Kevin Little. Let him hear it one more time. That is Kevin Little, attorney at law. You guys stay tight. We'll be right back after these messages.
This episode of My Conversation is sponsored by the Law Office of Kevin G. Little.